Well, welcome back to the dispatch. Really excited here. We have Tyler Mehrl for his first time on the dispatch. Welcome to the podcast, Tyler.
Thank you, Dan. Glad to be here. Glad to be part of the Pierce team.
Well, hey, why don't you give us a little background, a little introduction on who Tyler Mehrl is, what brought him to Pierce, and a little bit about what you do at the company.
Sure. Yeah. I lead our cabin chassis group. I'm the product manager. We've got a handful of product specialists underneath me, and we work with our customers to make sure that we're delivering what they need to do their job on a daily basis safely and ergonomically and, get out into the field and respond to the calls the way that they need to. I've been at Pierce now for 6 or 7 months, came from the marine industry, was there for 11 years, had a good time there, kind of grew up on the water, so that came natural, but couldn't be more happy to be part of the Pierce team. Been really impressed with the way that everyone here goes out of their way to make things happen for our customers.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that transition from the marine industry to the fire industry. What attracted you to Pierce? How'd you hear about the job? And then ultimately, how'd you decide to make that kind of a change?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to say when I talk about jumping from marine to this industry with people, it's two different, very passionate customer bases, very different product, but kind of similar in the way that our customers here and in the marine side, want their product to be exactly how they want it, right?
Mhm.
Like to customize some things, make their vessel in that case or apparatus in this case their own for their specific needs, how they like to use it, what they want to do with it on a daily basis. So definitely some similarities there, but both very passionate customer bases.
So tell me what kind of events or experience would you say have stood out in your first 6 months at Pierce?
Yeah, I would say just the overall willingness of everyone here to go above and beyond to make things happen, to deliver what a customer is asking for. They'll come to us with a particular need and we'll see if there's a way that we can do that. Putting something exactly where a firefighter needs it to be so they can have easy access to it. If it's a particular tool that they use on half their calls that they need to jump in and, hey, I need to pop out of the cab and this is at the ready, we'll find a way to make that happen.
And you jumped right in to the culture of Pierce. I mean, I know the first time we met was at the Stair climb, and I don't even know if you'd started your first day yet at that time.
No, I had not been in the building aside from my interview. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I was really glad that my supervisor, Matt Sauter, invited me to come be a part of that because definitely kind of got me jazzed up for jumping into Pierce. And it was definitely a pretty moving experience just kind of standing in the stands of Lambeau Field and kind of seeing that whole event go down, watching the firefighters and all their gear climb up the steps. Some of them are carrying their kids too.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful morning. I'd never been in Lambeau with no one else in there before,
Mhm.
right? Because we went in as volunteers to make sure everything was going smoothly and everybody was doing okay with the stair climb,
Yeah.
right? Didn't need any medical attention or anything like that. So we went into Lambeau. The sun's coming up on a nice crisp September morning, and it was really cool to be a part of that.
So, talk to me a little more about, your role here in Pierce, and I wanna ask some more specific questions about what being the custom chassis product manager really means. So talk to me about that product. What custom chassis does Pierce offer, and what are the differences in those chassis?
Sure. We have 4 different custom chassis. There's really kind of 2 sets of 2 when you think about it. You got 2 96-inch cabs, cabin chassis packages, I guess you could look at it that way. 2 different 96-inch and then 2 different 100-inch. Your 2 96-inchers are your Saber and your Enforcer. Saber, of course, is our Florida-built product. The Enforcer is tried and true, our highest volume, most popular cab. And kind of when you're looking at choosing between, like, for example, a Saber and an Enforcer, there's a lot of different things that can go into making that selection. One of the big ones is probably gonna be your engine choice. The Enforcer, you can get any of the different engine packages, more or less. The Saber, you're going to be looking more at the small block engines, unless you can go with the BMP program, then you can get into a PACCAR, of course. And then there's different option content as well, varying between the two. When you get into the 100-inch, so then your Impel Velocity, right? Obviously, a little bit more space. Department might be kind of weighing the pros and cons of having more space for more gear, more space for the firefighters versus, okay, can I fit this cab into my firehouse, or are you in an area where you got tighter streets that you need to get down, that sort of thing?
All right, Tyler, so for our listeners, you mentioned BMP. Can you explain BMP a little bit more, and then maybe specifically that engine offering that's exclusively available in that?
Yeah, so we mentioned BMP earlier, pertaining to the Saber product. On Saber, you can only get the PACCAR engine if you're in the BMP program. BMP stands for Build My Pierce. It's basically a program to get a little bit shorter lead time. There's kind of a certain set of criteria based on what options you can pick, how many SPs, special options you can pick aside from just your standard options, right? So it's kind of puts you in a different track to get your truck a little bit sooner than as opposed to build to order or BTO, as you might hear it referred to as. You want to add anything to that, Dan?
Certainly, if people have more questions about it, I'd encourage them to reach out to their sales representative. I know that it's become certainly a very popular program with the lead time challenges that are facing the industry, but it's also there's other benefits that people are experiencing with it in terms of more uptime. We actually see lower warranty rates on BMP trucks and things of that nature because you're getting more commonly used options.
Right.
And the other part I think that's just neat about BMP in general is that you can't tell the difference. If you walk next to those 2 units on the floor, you don't know. And it's still some really incredible trucks that go through that program. It's just that how do they fit together the best and what is goes to that traditional build to order versus staying in the BMP program.
Yeah, I think you made a really critical point there that I missed about it. We're putting options on that truck that we build a lot of, we're really good at. And so you're going to get a really good product, right? Some of the more unique special things we're certainly willing to do, but it might be something we've never done before. So it might take a little more time, that sort of thing. So that's a really critical piece, I think, of, we're building options that we're really good at and we do all the time.
So what kind of key factors do firefighters need to consider when they're designing a fire truck cab and chassis?
I would say, again, it really all comes down to functionality, kind of just what your department needs are. Can you fit, again, in where you need to get to respond to your calls? Is it critical that you have more space for more gear for your firefighters? We've got those different widths that we talk about with the 96 and the 100, but you can also get into your cab height. We have flat roof cabs. You can get into the raised roofs, the 10-inch, 20-inch, and so on. Kind of, again, just a balancing act of what your needs are versus how much space you have available to get your truck where it needs to go. Right.
So when customers are going through that and they're going through that process there, is there something they start with? Like, do they start with the width of the cab or do they start with the engine and then you're saying, "Hey, you make a cab recommendation," or the sales representative does based on that? Or how does that conversation typically start? A bit of answering my own question. I suppose some of it probably has to do with what they're currently running.
Yeah, I mean, if you're currently running, a 96-inch cab with, say, an Enforcer, for example, if you have the ability to go to a 100-inch, you're able to still get where you need to go, get in your firehouse, all those sorts of things, then maybe that's something you want to look at to, everybody always wants more space. It's like when you're building a house, you're designing your garage, right? Nobody ever has a big enough garage. You can make your garage as big as you want. You're still going to wish you had more room later.
Yeah.
Tying back to the marine industry, you can order a boat with, say it's rated for 175 to 225. You're never going to be sad that you didn't go with the max horsepower. Get the max horsepower every time if you're out there ordering a boat right now. You're never going to be disappointed with that. But yeah, in terms of what cab you end up going with, just comes back to what you physically can get away with. And then assuming you can go with a bigger cab, then why not, right?
So what are the available customizations that fire departments request for their cabs and chassis, and how does Pierce meet those needs?
Well, how much time do we have, Dan? I think I heard at one point we have 300,000 options.
It's like 100,000 standard options. And then you get it. It's mind blowing. When we're doing tours, what I'll typically do, like if you're out at checkout and you start with that customization, if you just look at 2 bumpers and you just explain the difference, like, hey, this is one bumper on one side of our manufacturer. And then literally in the bay next to it, here's that bumper. And let's walk through the differences, whether it's 45-degree edges on it or a chrome bumper versus some Line-X edging or whatever the case is on it. Does it have plumbing in it? What are the locations of the sirens? What does it have a queue? Is it a mounted queue on the top of it? Is it built into the bumper? And then does it have tow hooks, whatever? And you go through all of these different things. And you're just looking at 2 bumpers. And then you go back, and to me, the next big element of that customization is the cab.
Every department has their own preferences,
Yeah.
right? And that may change year to year, chief to chief, et cetera. So we see a lot of different things. It's tough to pinpoint one particular thing, but you have your different seats. You have any different accessory, you can locate a number of different spots, right? Within reason. Again, you get back into the kind of the roof height. You can do different things there. There's EMS compartments, various storage compartment options. You can choose which way your door opens on those compartments based on how the firefighter is typically going to be accessing it, right? So it's all about kind of making life easy and efficient and safe for the firefighter.
Sure. And when you talk about the height of it, part of it is just even the element of space from a communication standpoint. and whether or not people are physically using the space above them, but the benefit of sight lines and things of that nature for the firefighters. I mean, do people get to that level of customization too, where they're looking at what's that experience like for the firefighters running in the back of the cab?
Definitely, especially, when people look at kind of their current apparatus that they're running with, if they have any sort of areas of improvement that they think they wanna try to achieve on their next truck, then we'll look at those sorts of things.
And so how does Pierce ensure the chassis can handle heavy firefighting equipment while keeping performance and maneuverability strong?
Yeah, so throughout the process, our team here will execute, weight reviews and things of that nature. We'll look at what suspension they have spec'd out, if we need to upgrade that accordingly based on the equipment that they're planning on putting on the truck. Make sure everything's kosher, right? The other big one that I would mention is frame rails. Of course, we have 10-inch or 13-inch frame rails, the velocity standard with 13. Kind of tying back with our prior conversation, if you're saying an enforcer and you can choose between a 10 or a 13, I'd go with the 13 every time, right? Because it's going to be your stronger option. You also get a little bit more space for all the harnessing, that sort of thing. So frame rails are a big one when it comes to the durability and strength of the rig.
Can you talk a little bit about how ergonomics shape cab design and what does Pierce look at to make the layout efficient for emergency responses?
Yeah, so that example I gave a moment ago about kind of which way your door openings are, that would be an example I would give about, making things ergonomic for the firefighter. If a firefighter is going to jump out of the cab and on a regular basis, he has to access a particular tool. We'll make sure that door opens in the direction that makes it the easiest for him to get at. Anything of that nature, again, it's really just firefighter preference, how that department typically operates. One of the things I noticed when I spent some time with one of the departments down in India a couple weeks ago was they communicate a lot, but they also almost don't have to because they've got a well-oiled machine, right? Within that group, everybody knows where they're going to go, who has to grab what tool. And so I think it's critical for them as they're going through the process of putting their proposal together to think about all those things. And then we can see what we can do on our end to put the right options into that proposal to make life easy on them.
And that's fascinating when you think of, again, you mentioned, bigger is always better. You want the boat with the most horsepower. You certainly want the most compartment space. You want to figure that, but the other part is what are you using the most frequently? How do you get to that safely and efficiently? If it's something that's heavy, how do you have that lower? Um, in your tab or in what compartment you're selecting on where that may be. I think that's fascinating when people get to that specific of planning, and then it carries over into how they design and spec their apparatus. Do you have any experiences with that on the most commonly used equipment and how we're creative to solve those problems?
Yeah, well, you mentioned like how low or how high something is. That's a huge one, right? If it's a heavier tool or something that's accessed regularly, you don't want it to be above your shoulders, right? So we'll definitely put a lot of thought into making sure it's at easy kind of torso height, right? And that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I know that even the things like the ergonomics around the stair step entry to and from the Enforcer and Saber cabs have always gotten really great feedback. That flat rear floor, from an ergonomic standpoint, so that you can go through there and decrease trips and falls and things like that, because those are some of the biggest injuries that firefighters are facing. So, what challenges come up when designing cabs for different needs, such as urban versus rural fire departments? How are those used, or how are those addressed differently?
Yeah, urban versus rural, I would probably tie back into a couple of different things. Number one being the size of the apparatus with your wheelbase, right? With being able to get where you need to go. Of course, we've got the TAC 4 T3 product to help with getting around corners and some of those larger apparatus. Urban, you're probably going to have more trucks in your fleet, right? Maybe a little bit more specialized for your particular neighborhood because you got a bigger fleet to handle that area. Rural, you might have probably not as many trucks available, so it might be more of a one size fits all, kind of more do it all type of build.
How does Pierce work with fire departments during the design process to ensure that the cab and chassis meet their specific requirements?
Well, I would say as an internal team, as well as our field sales reps work really closely with the customer all through the process to make sure that we're going to deliver on what they need us to give them in order to be able to respond to their calls as they need to, of course. I would say one of the key steps in that process is the approval visit right before we start ordering parts and really getting into the engineering process for that specific truck.
Well, what's next? I mean, can you talk a little bit about trends or innovations in chassis and
Sure.
cab design?
Yeah, so we showed a couple of new things in the cab space at FDIC a few weeks ago. We showed our low profile enforcer, which is lowered 3.5 inches, which may not sound like a lot, but that's a huge deal if you're a department that's really height conscious, whether that be pertaining to bridges or to just getting in your firehouse and making it a little bit easier for your driver to back that truck in on a daily basis, or of course multiple times a day in a lot of cases. So we actually lowered the overall height by 3.5 inches. It was designed specifically for aerials with a low profile, low steel ladder. So the other thing that was new for us that we launched at FDIC was a refreshed TAC 4 T3 with the aluminum wheels, disc brakes, and you can actually do tire chains on the T3 product now for departments that need to do that. A lot of people are really excited about that one, especially with being able to get the aluminum wheels. Of course, you have a weight savings, and then you can achieve fleet consistency with departments that maybe have some trucks without T3 and some with. Maybe their ones without T3 already have aluminum wheels, and they would like to have aluminum wheels on everything. Now you'll be able to do.
Yeah, but aesthetically, those aluminum wheels just look awesome. But, tell me a little bit more about T3. I know one of the challenges I think we have is that we live in it. And so, when we're talking about whether it's cabs, chassis, foam systems, whatever the case is, we see it all the time. And so, like, all of it's not new to us. But I was just up in Ontario last week, and the amount of people that had never heard of or experienced the T3, and they were looking at it, and the folks up in the commercial group had it positioned in such a way that you could see the axle turned, like, during that, and so all these people are looking at it, crawling under it, and tell me about what the advantages of T3 are.
Yeah, so T3 basically gives you the ability to actually steer your rear axle, which, like you said, at FDIC a few weeks ago, it's been out there for quite a while, but we had that truck sitting there with those wheels turned, and it still gets a lot of attention and people walking up and saying, wow, look at that. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just allows you to be able to get your truck's turning radius way down. But I don't know if you're familiar with the story or not, but I've heard a story here and there where there was a chief of a department that was looking at buying a Pierce and outfitting it with T3. And he actually asked us to bring a truck with that to his neighborhood. He lived in a cul-de-sac, and he said, hey, if you can bring that truck in here and whip it around without driving in anybody's grass or anything, right, then I'll buy the truck. So we did exactly that, and he bought the truck.
And it's
So,
incredible how that only activates when you've turned that front axle a certain amount, and it's 100% mechanical.
yep,
So it takes away a lot of that the operator error, the requirements for training, the sway, different concerns that people have around that. But it's just it's incredible when you see it and you feel it when you're driving. But the other one is, have you ever seen it in a pumper configuration?
I have not.
It is mind blowing. Like, I think Scotts Valley up in, Northern California has it, and they can just turn that pumper on a dime. Like,
I bet.
in the courtyard out here, they could turn in a full circle with
Like
their
you're driving around in a Camry,
it's
right?
yeah, right. But it's one of those things that you just think of, and to that chief's credit of, "Hey, I wanna see it in my community and operate in my community." You gotta respect that element of it. Like, no chief wants to go believe the technology without being able to experience first, put their name on something, and then be wrong.
Yeah,
And so to say, like, "Hey, I wanna see this thing," but it is if you don't think it should work, and then when until you actually see that operating. And no different, I mean, obviously, like, it still makes me scratch my head when you see those really talented tiller operators that can go and they can, like, crab walk the tiller around or
right.
whatever the case is. But the T3 taking away all of that training elements, and it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not a tiller, like, it's not tiller type maneuverability, but just what that offers people is pretty incredible. And
Yeah.
now, as that they're continuing to invest in it, and your group's continuing to invest in it with the aluminum wheels and disc brakes. I mean, that's just top notch.
It's not a tiller, but it allows you to do things that you would not otherwise be able to do, right?
Yeah, and then getting to those locations matters, and being able
Definitely.
to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Alright, so tell me a little bit about, we talked how you dove right in to the Pierce
First trip to
culture, the stair climb. But tell me about, I understand you were recently at FDIC, but not only at FDIC, you went in advance.
Well, I looked like Popeye at the end of the week from scrubbing all the trucks, right? But
Yeah, so well, explain what you, I guess to the podcast listeners out there, what is the advanced team? Like, what do they do?
it's basically just a group of us that goes down a handful of days early to take all the trucks down to get on site and scrub them all up, make them nice and shiny, so you can see your reflection in every part of the truck, right? Every crack, every crevice gets wiped down pretty thoroughly, and we're there to show off our product and make it look as good as it can. So we put a lot of hours into you know making sure things look the way they need to. And, we're obviously really proud of what we put out there. So we want to put a lot of effort into that and make sure that it shows well when Thursday morning shows up.
Yeah, so walk me through that. What first time on the A team? What
First
was
time for all of it.
first time for all of it, I suppose. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, that was really the best part of it for me, and part of why I wanted to jump into it. Because I mean, I'm doing everything I can. Like I said, I've been here for 6, 7 months. I'm doing everything I can do to really immerse myself in this world, right? Because I think that's critical as a product manager to understand everything about the product, the customers, just the life that they live, everything like that. So I actually went and spent about 24 hours at one of the departments down in Indy. It was Station 44 on the east side. And we had a pretty busy day. It was about a dozen calls in the 24 hours I was there. We didn't have any, 5-alarm fires or anything like that. We didn't pump any water, but it was awesome just to go live that life for a day and be around the guys, talking with them about everything under the sun, basically in between calls or even while we're out running to a scene. You got the headphones on like we do right now, and you're just talking like you've been buddies for 20 years, right?
And so how'd you get so you're down there for the FDIC trade show.
Mhm.
You're going in advance for the advance team to set up the trade show. How did you get set up to go run with the IFD?
So Steve Battles is the battalion chief down there. I got hooked up with him and met him when they were here for, I believe, an approval visit in January. And credit to Matt, he actually had the idea to send me off with Steve. Yeah, so Steve set me up with Station 44, knowing that it was a busy department, that I'd see a lot of action. And like I said, about a dozen calls, nothing major, but got to kind of go live that life and see some of the things that they deal with on a regular basis. I think one of the more interesting ones is kind of a funny story. So there was a lady that dropped her remote into her recliner, like everyone does, falls in the cracks, right? Reached down, got her arm caught in the springs down there, and it was kind of like a Chinese finger trap. Anytime she moved her arm, it would get worse. And what we ended up doing was we sawed the recliner apart so that we could get her out of there.
Man, and that's the stuff I don't think people fully have an appreciation for is I think people think firefighter and immediately their head goes to burning building, running in, protecting life and property. They go on their first due on just about everything.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, because they 'cause they're gonna get there first, so they go even if it's, more of a EMT type of call that an ambulance is eventually gonna show up for, but, they'll come and do whatever they can do to help stabilize the situation, or if there's, someone that needs more immediate attention, they'll provide that. We had one where everybody was kinda jacked up for this call. We got a call for a car hauler that was on the side of the interstate on fire. Yeah, so we're like, "Here we go." So we showed up and just had trailer brakes that were smoking a little bit, but the guy was still really concerned. He's pulled over on the side of the interstate, cars flying by at 75, 80 miles an hour, and he's got smoke coming from his trailer, but, we got him cooled off and he was okay. We suggested he see a service technician about that. Wasn't a whole lot else for us to do, but still provided him, some peace of mind that, he was gonna be alright. He's not gonna things aren't gonna ignite.
Yeah. It is scary though, because like even that, anything roadside, just the risk that is not only to that civilian, but the firefighters responding to it is just, I mean, harrowing. Like how much you read about and see.
Again, it was mostly EMT type calls, but you could see on the faces of the people that we were helping that, they felt a lot better once we got there. So then typically ambulance would show up and we'd kind of pass it off to them and they do their thing. But
What advice would you have for other Pierce employees that want to get immersed in that kind of experience, that wanna do that? I mean, is that unique to the IFD? Can people go to other fire departments and have an experience like that?
it definitely sounds like there's opportunities kind of all around for that. I've had people from the Greenville Fire Department here near Pierce offer, "Hey, you can, stop by any time and spend some time with us and go out on a few calls," that sort of thing. So I think if you ask around, the opportunities are definitely there. It was invaluable though. I highly recommend it. I definitely plan on doing it again. My grandfather was actually the chief of the fire department in Dubuque, Iowa for a lot of years. He was retired well before I was old enough to know what was going on and everything, but still kind of feel like I had that connection there and it was cool to kind of go experience it.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you joining the Pierce team and all you're doing to serve our customers, and also just appreciate you being on the dispatch. Thanks a lot, Tyler.
Well, thanks, Dan. I really like doing things like this. Still have plenty to learn, right? There's a lot to learn here. only having 6 months under my belt, but looking forward to continuing to ingrain myself in this place and in this culture. I'm pursuing my CDL, so I should have that later this summer and be able to go drive some trucks and participate in some more of these things as a driver. So
Here we go. So coming to a road show near you, Tyler Mehrl.
pretty soon.
All right, thanks, bud. Have a good one.
Thanks, Dan.